Universe 2030. A follow-on piece of sorts from The Beautiful Mice and their dysfunctional lives in the grip of the behavioural sink. And from the experiment and their limited thoughts on the process, I see a very large problem with their findings now I have given it further thought. Even at first, I could see a point of issue. With them keeping the conditions set and the mice captive, meant the experiment would always run that way, because that's what was required, seemingly not to discover the results, but to prove them. So, the conditions were set up to deliver said result. The mice behaved as expected, and it was conclusive, they say, self-destruct every time. And like in the article, I mention how in the fictional story of the Rats of Nim, they broke out and forged a new existence. Theorising, I guess, that if they did have a chance to leave that setup, awful life, they would. As people would. I had already realised some people have already suffered a similar fate to the experimental mice. Years ago, when a terrible drought happened in Darfur, they said lots of people were dying. So, me being of a simple thought process, wondered why they aren't just relocating to better conditions, as logic would dictate. And they tried, it turns out. But due to modern borders, conflict and politics, they were prevented from leaving or were slaughtered if they tried to cross the border. What a logical human or animal might do to negotiate a perilous situation is hampered and engineered often to be a certain way. And that's what is created, to try and dictate the final result. They've run the simulations, have models, data and projections to predict and create the conditions, expecting a result they have planned for. But this is where I realise that once you take a precision plan out of the lab and into a live scenario, the parameters change somewhat and are prone to unforeseen circumstances. And here is where I shall steer away from mice and focus on jellyfish. Another interesting piece of information I noted at the time, although I can't locate where I read it, which has recurred as a thought in this idea. It was said that certain jellyfish bloomed in extreme numbers when they were killed. I think it was when there was a large amount in Japanese waters and it threatened the fishing industry, so they killed loads. And that seemed to cause a switch to flick, and instead of hundreds of eggs, they started producing thousands. So on that premise I wondered, what if the mice just carried on going through the motions and made no effort to evolve or adapt because their species didn't depend on them for survival? They were a small separated subgroup with no purpose other than the experiment. And based on that, they believe that humanity will just collapse in on itself, that they wouldn't notice the conditions being set and the restricted living being forced on them to try and engineer the result they would want. Then be proved right when there is an elite group of humans who deserve to live more than the others, and will in fact take steps to facilitate the self-destruction of those others. But all it looks like is that a devious, callous part of human nature thrives in those types, possibly more so because they lack heart and compassion in the normal sense. Because while they have their resources and family set up to be in the optimal conditions to thrive, they go about making sure others' conditions aren't so favourable, ensuring they aren't able to reach the same level. It's still instinctual competitiveness to me, not really above basic animal instincts at all, just like the rest of us humans. Unless, of course, they aren't entirely human, but that strays into my article Not Like Us. At this point, we are led to understand it is just humans, making bizarre and crazy requests of other humans, so that we put ourselves into the experiment so they can try and steer its outcome, trying to create Universe 2030.